Hello and welcome to the 5th Further Maths webinar. This one focusing on constructing or designing notes pages. My name is David Tynan. Today we're going to try to go through the process of constructing some notes pages by hand. We'll see how we go, how many we get through. I'll try to show the basic elements in a couple of different scenarios, and then later on see how it can be used with a graph and a slider and split windows. So without further ado, I'll just jump over to the calculator. And this is the file, and just for your information, this file will be available to you when you're sent an email after the presentation at some stage. So there is a sort of finished example, but unlike some of the previous webinars, we'll try to construct from nothing, just so you can get used to how those things are constructed. So you'll see the summary of the things that we're going to look at there. 1.1 is really the current page, current problem, and then you'll see that there's 4 other ones. The further examples at the end are really just because we probably won't have time to go into those in detail, but I'll try to explain how they're working and how they give some other examples of things you might do with notes. Okay, so just in summary, so 2.1 is a formula substitution example. So this is the sort of thing you could use in a SAC or in an exam, or just as a solver, a tool to find some answers for yourself quickly. The idea is that you create a list of values, do some stats for it, generate the 5-figure summary, calculate the IQR and the range, and work out the lower and upper fence values. So that's the starting one that we're going to do. So let me start with a new document, and we're going to add a notes page. So for those, this is sort of pitched at people who have never really used notes pages before. So let's add some notes, and we'll just title it something sensible, like 5-figure summary. And it's also an outlier check. Okay, so first we've got to generate the data. And so the way we do that is to insert a box which is not just straight text like that is, but is a maths box. So the first time you do it, you'll see menu, insert, and then maths box, and you'll see there it says Command M, or if you're on a Windows computer, it'll say Control M. I'll do that, and you'll notice you get the sort of little red dots around it. That's the way of flagging that this is a live maths box. So you'll see how that works in the examples that we're going to do. Okay, so we'll first put some data, and we'll call this variable xvals. And then in order to assign some data to that, we use Control and then the template key. You'll see it says :equals. And now we'll use the set brackets. So Control, set brackets, and I'll just put in some dummy data here: 1, 2, 3, 3, 3, 4, 4, 5, 6, comma, and then 16, just for the example. Okay, if you press enter, it will give you an output. So this is the input in blue, and then the output is, in this case, done in green. And if you press enter, it goes to the next line, and it assumes that you want to keep using a maths box. So we actually do want to do that. And so what we'd like to do is just some stats on that. So the stats that we want to do is just the one variable stats. So if I press menu and then 6 for calculations, and then 6 again for statistics, and 1 for stat calculations, and then 1 variable statistics, and you would have seen this before. Okay, and so the variable that we're going to work with for the X is what we called our X vals, and the rest is just automatically generated. So here are our answers. Now in a small screen, that might be okay, but in fact we want to use some particular stats that are within those results. So in order to do that, you have to select the maths object. So you'll see the dots, the red dots are around it. And so if I went to menu now and maths box options or attributes, it will tell me or give me a few options there. So what I want to do is leave the input there, and I want to show the input but not the output. So if I click on that, and it'll do hide output. Now it doesn't immediately hide it, but if you click somewhere else, you'll see that it's no longer showing those results. Okay, so now what we're going to do is a 5-figure summary. And just for clarity, you'll see the box there, but I'm going to delete over the box and then type some text, which is 5-figure summary. So 5-figure summary equals, and now I'm going to do a maths box. So it's Command M or Control M, and then I'll use the set brackets again, Control set brackets, and now I'm going to put in the minimum, Q1, median, Q3, and maximum. So all of these things have been generated for the data that's above there. So the way to access them is either by the var menu, where they're listed there. So stat min, and then a comma. And just to show there's another way to do this, if I type STAT and dot, it will pop up all the things that are stat dot something. And so the next one I want is stat dot Q1. So you'll see that there. Press a comma again, STAT dot, and I want the median, comma, STAT dot Q3, comma, STAT dot, and it's max. And you'll see that I have all of those things there. So that's not too bad. However, I'd really not to see that input there in blue. So if I click on that, and most of you will know that I could go to the menu and do the attributes again, but if you do Control and then menu, you will get the options there to change the math box attributes. So this time I want to hide the input. Okay, job done. So now on a single line, I've got the 5-figure summary for the data. And the idea is that this is a template. And in the template, you can just change the data. So for example, I could change a value in here, or I could put a completely new set of data there and it would just automatically generate that. Okay, so I'll do an IQR, and just to show another way to do this, if I press the left arrow, I get to the left of the maths box. And so I can type IQR is equal to, and I really just want to say stat dot Q3 minus stat dot Q1. Enter. So that's okay. And then I could also do a similar thing for the range. And I'll quickly now just go to maths box attributes and hide the input. And so it just tells me the value. And so if I want to put something on the same line, now I'm inside the box, but if I press the right arrow, I'm outside, and I can actually just press the space bar. So range, and this is just the text describing what's coming next. And I can now put a maths box by doing Command or Control M. And I'll put stat dot max minus stat dot min-x. And then similarly, I'll get that box and I will change the attribute so it doesn't show the input, but only the output. Okay, and now we can do similar things such as the lower fence, just to finish that off. The lower fence equals, equals, and I'll go inside the maths box now, so stat dot q1x minus 1.5 times the variable I called IQR. I call it IQR? Better go back and find this. Oh, I didn't say that. Okay. I need to make a little change here. I'll make it IQR is equal to that. And I'll get rid of this bit here and press enter. And it doesn't make as much sense now not to have that there, sorry. So actually there is a better way to do this. I can have IQR as the text equals and the variable as well. So now back in here it should recognize that IQR has been defined because we defined it here. And so back inside here I should be able to use the variable IQR. Okay, and then similarly the upper fence equals inside the maths box stat dot q3 plus 1.5 times IQR. And this is dynamic. And I'll just choose to leave that there. And that tells me that the final number in the list above really is an outlier. So the main purpose of this first example is just to show the general layout, the fact that you can move things around, you can change the display, you can change the precision of numbers, and you can also format it in such a way to suit yourself. So there's no hard and fast conventions about this, but it's probably important to note that using the student software or the teacher software, if you're a teacher, is probably the easiest way to construct a notes page, because I can do a few things like easily change the text. It can be done on the calculator as well. Choose to emphasize certain things and generally play with the layout. It's obviously then here is quite easy to change the size of it. So I can, you'll see in this strip at the top here, I can change it so that it's all a little bit smaller. And that sometimes helps when you're fitting a lot of things on the page. Okay, so that's really problem 2 sorted. So let's move on to another one. And in order to do this, I'm going to do insert problem, which you can do with the docs menu. If you press the docs key and insert a new problem. So we're going to insert a problem and add notes, and you'll notice it's called 2.1. Sorry, yeah, this one's 2.1. I think it's 3.1 on the original file. Anyway, that doesn't matter. So this one is about compound interest investment. And the idea is to just show a couple more features that are here. Okay, so let's start with some text. So compound interest, investment, and then we'll do some variables. So V0, and you'll notice I'm going to go a little bit quicker this time. And let's say it's $5,000. And the years, so years, we're going to say is equal to 5. And the rate, which we'll call R, is equal to 6. And then we'll do the value after 5 years. So, we have to do the K value. So K is equal to 12. So we're saying it's monthly. And then we're going to add some stuff after that. So the R value, I'll just space, press the right arrow and space a little bit. And then I'll say, so the R value, and I'll just write it as R, is equal to, and now I'll put a maths box in, and the, I think I'll call it, do I call it big R? I don't know. Anyway, I'll just call it, I'll just do the calculation. So it's 1 plus fraction template, the R value divided by the K value over 100. Now, you'll notice that something strange happened here, and you'd think that I meant it. But the R is bolded to indicate that it has been stored, but the K is not. And the reason for this is because, and this is a classic rookie error that I've committed, that I haven't actually pressed enter for the K. So what I'm going to do is go to that and press enter. And now you'll notice that it immediately bolds the K to say that it understands that that is, in fact, a variable that has something stored in it. Okay, and then I'll go to the right of that box there and then just close the brackets. But again, it hasn't done anything, so I have to press enter. Okay, so let's clean it up a little bit. I'm going to change this box so that it only shows the input. So only show the input, so hide the output and click away, and it's only showing the input. Same with this one, math box attributes, and I want to hide the output. And similarly with the R, I'm going to hide the output of that. And you'll see that I've got this laid out. Now, if you would like all of these in one line, you have to go to the left of this, and it's like a word processor then. And I can press enter, enter backspace, and I've got that on one line, and then similarly, I can do that with that. And down here, I think I would just like to show this as the output as well. So I'd hide the input. And so I have the value. So it's calculating the R value based on things that have been written there before. Okay, so let's go to calculating the value. So the value of the investment after 5 years. So rather than say 5, what I'm going to say is Command M for maths box and just put years and enter. Remember, enter. So for this one, I want to hide the input and just show the output. So after 5 years, oops, capitalized, ARS, equals. So we're now going to put a maths box in and calculate the value. So we'll put in brackets here. I could have stored the big R as something called big R, but I won't for the moment. So brackets 1 plus fraction template, the R value divided by the K value over 100, and close that bracket, and then raise it to the power of K times the number of years. So there's our compound interest thing, and then multiply that result by V naught, which is stored. Okay, so there's our value, and I elect in this case to hide the input. Okay, so we just have that value, but that's far too much precision. And let's say we wanted it to the nearest cent. I'll show another attribute of this. If you looking at the attributes, you'll notice that there's a display digits thing here. So I'm going to change the display digits so that it's doing fixed to. So it's doing to the nearest cent. And there we are. And I can even add a dollar symbol here to give an indication. Okay, and the final thing to do with that particular calculation is I can set a target. So I can do solving. So that's the thing that's a little bit different as well. So if, to the left of this, if the target, I'll define a variable, target is equal to 10 grand, whoops, I left out my equals, 10,000, and I'll press enter for that, but I only want to see this once, and I want to hide the output for that one. If that is true, this will take. And we'll do another maths box, but this maths box is going to be a solve command. So solve, where the target is equal to 1 plus fraction, oops, the wrong key, command, and it's R divided by K divided by 100, and close the brackets, and to the power of K times the years. Okay, so that's what we want to do, and we want to multiply that by V naught, and we want to solve that for years. And that gives us the value that we wanted. So I'll just make that so it only shows the output. Okay. So that's how many years it will take. And again, we can round this. Block attributes, and we want to display. It doesn't. For this example, we'll just use fixed to as well. And it'll take that long. So those are some elements. And so the notes page is particularly versatile for setting up some commonly used formulas and being pretty efficient at doing that, so that if, for example, I change any of those things here, so even just the amount, you'll notice that there's a flow-through effect to all of those, in a similar way to things like spreadsheet cells and programs. It's just that it's live, it's dynamic. What I tend to do is follow the conventions on the calculator notes pages of having blue for things that are entered in. Sometimes I'll even highlight these, so it's possible to really clearly mark out the things that can be entered by the user. And then that makes it clear that when someone uses the template, they're really just changing those things. And then I use green as a way of showing results. So here is the final input that a user might do, and all of the other things are based on calculations. So that's problem 3. And now that I realise that there's only 5 minutes left, I think I might just demonstrate some other things and show you how they're different. Okay, so I'll go to the document that you'll be sent, or you'll have access to, which has the completed one for problem 4. Construct a notes page with a graph and a slider. Okay, so I'll move to that particular page. So that's the one we just did. And here's one that is just for looking at depreciation by reducing balance. You'll notice that the window has been split, which you can do from the doc menu. There's a page layout option there that allows you to split the page. It's already been split, so we don't need to do it. And you may or may not have noticed that inside a notes page, this top part of the page that you're on is a notes page, and the split has a stat graph underneath. So, for example, there are more calculations on this notes page. It's about car values, and I'll just drag this down a bit so you can see. A bit fiddly to get to that point. This is still movable. Come on, there we go. Okay, so I've generated a time variable there. At the moment, it's just doing a sequence of numbers from 0 to 10. And then the standard formula for the direct rule for the values of some asset that's depreciated by that method of reducing balance. I'll just try to get that back. And you may or may not have noticed, but inside the notes page, there's an option there to insert not just maths boxes, but sliders. So I created a slider which allowed me to vary the R value. So this slider has now been set up so that I can change the rate. So the reason for including an example like that is notes pages don't necessarily exist just on their own. You can use them with other pages and other applications, and they integrate quite nicely with those. So that's one example of that. And now I'll just show you another one. This is a file, well, it's based on a thing called smoothing, which you would have done in the core. And often in SAC and exam questions, they ask for a smooth value, but the smooth value is, it could be a 3 mean or 3 median, 5 mean, 5 median, or it could be a centered 4-point moving mean. So all of these options, you'll notice in here, there's really just a variable there. There's no formula for it. And the reason for that is that they don't exist except through this spreadsheet. So the spreadsheet, so you notice it says problem 5.1, 5.2. So within problem 5, there is a separate page where you enter in your X and your Y, or your time and your Y values. And then these values are just using spreadsheet formulas. So you'll see down the bottom in blue, there's a fairly complicated formula that's generating those values. However, the user may only be interested in a quick way to get to these smoothed values. And so the notes page is just accessing the value of the variables. So for example, the mean 3 value, it's actually looking at the smooth mean value in time 8. So all the user is entering is time 8. They are also able to enter data, but the data is actually entered by the spreadsheet. And similarly, there's a time series plot that goes with that as well. Okay. And here's the final one. Again, it's linking a graphic representation with a notes page. So the page on the left that's split is a notes page, and key values for amortisation, a reducing balance loan, are there. And the formulas that are in them are quite detailed, but they're just there for the user to calculate the particular values. So you can explore them when you've got a bit more time to see that they work. But the key things that can change, for example, I could change the interest rate here and make it 5.3, enter, and then it's reflected by change in the graph as well. On the right is actually a function graph page, and there are two functions there that are quite complicated, but they just use the financial features there. So I'll just double click that one and press tab up, and you'll see it's quite a detailed formula that's taking in the values from the notes page. This one for either for graph 1 or this one is for graph 2. Okay. So I know half an hour is not a long time, but the intent was just to as an introduction to some of the possibilities for notes pages.